Mansfield!
I was going to do a video on UFO Enemy Unknown anyway because I've been obsessed with it most of my life, but then I realised it's been 25 years since the game first came out back in the early months of 1994. 25 years. 25 years of keeping a watchful eye over Earth, of battering flying objects that have definitely been identified out of the sky, of losing 2 or 3 or 7 soldiers somehow, some way, even though you were being really careful. A quarter of a century spent being terrified of Chryssalids. Normally I'd have an existential breakdown about this point, life being as it is so very fleeting and time apparently accelerating as you get older. But with UFO it's different. UFO is something truly special to me, a game that never ages, that never gets boring, that never outstays its welcome. There are going to be some of you wondering what in the blue hell I'm waffling about, so for your benefit I'll offer some semblance of explanation. You might have heard of UFO Enemy Unknown, though equally you might know it as XCOM UFO Defense in the States, XCOM Unknown Invaders in Japan, and in one of my favourite little tidbits, which was cute until someone put it up on the Wikipedia page, thus ruining my feeling of superiority, XCOM Enemy Unknown in the PAL PlayStation version. Many names, just one game. Set in space year 1999, that being in the near future, UFO has you policing the world, attempting to put some kind of figurative space dam up around the planet to stem the flow of alien invaders into the airspace above Bromsgrove, and everywhere else in the world, but mainly Bromsgrove. You do this by watching the planet, setting up a base, scanning for unknowable floating oblongs or UFOs, intercepting them with terrestrial aircraft attempting to shoot them down, then heading to the crashed wreckage and plopping down a bunch of grunts with guns to mop up the chunks. That's your basic setup. As you may well expect, it gets a lot more complex and a lot deeper from there. As you progress through this real-time world-watching and turn-based alien blasting sim, you get better. More bases around the world and so more satellite coverage, research into alien tech leading to more offensive and defensive strategies and technologies to employ. You can shoot down unknowable floating oblongs easier and your troops' chances of survival begin to creep up bit by bit. And then UFO just kicks you in the face again and ratchets things up a level. It is a sadist of a game and your alien foes are not about to let you get the upper hand. Just as quickly as you make any progress and think you've got a handle on it, the angry ETs turn up in bigger space boats with bigger guns and angrier friends, and the whole sorry mess goes back to square one. UFO Enemy Unknown is glorious. See, I've played UFO so many times now, I've started and restarted games more times than I know how to count to, like more than 6 I think. And it was quite funny, to me at least, playing the game on all these different versions for the video and seeing how I automatically do the same thing at the start of every game. Place the base, name it AEIOU, yes, that is a cheat in Terror from the Deep, UFO's sequel. Build a large radar, general stores, living quarters and alien containment, buy in a few bits and pieces like stun rods, sack any troops with firing accuracy below around 55, then hire in about 1.5 times the amount of troops fired. It is methodical, I'd say. And it never bores me. It's the right way of doing it. This is a game I've pretty much mastered. I know all its ins and outs in a way I don't know them for any other, well, hardly any other game. I don't even think I know Football Manager this well, and I've been playing that series even longer than this game. It's second nature, it's comfortable, and dare I say it, it's fun to do. If it was just that opening few actions on repeat forever, I'd probably still be happy. I do like my comfortableness after all. But of course it's more than that. UFO's mix of simulation and turn-based strategy blew my tiny mind back in the day. No, it wasn't the first, I know, but that's not the point. Its blend of play styles, the control you feel you actually have over things, both in that you're able to make decisions as to how you proceed and that these decisions can come back to bite you in the behind later on, makes it something you can really take ownership of. And there's such a sense of foreboding to everything, and it's not entirely down to the difficulty. The music plays a huge part in it too. The music. So lovely and faintly terrifying. This is all compounded by getting into that turn-based combat and having your rookie grunts cock up and miss 9 shots in a row before a hitherto unseen space arse shoots you from behind a farmhouse and kills your sergeant. Not only is there this threat of things just not going your way, but there's the ever-present feeling that you can nadger it all up for yourself if you're not careful enough. If you don't think about your every move, if you don't take your time, if you haven't researched better weapons, even though it's already March of Space Year 1999 and the bigger Xenobuggers are starting to show. And when you do fail, which you will do on your first few plays, you fail hard. It becomes a series of cascading failure waves, knocking you further and further down. The aliens don't let off if you're on the back foot, allowing you more time to regroup and refocus. They double down. More UFOs show. Alien bases are set up on Earth. World governments sign pacts with the invaders, thus leaving you bereft of much needed funding. And eventually, they just win. There often comes a point in a game of UFO where you realise you're not going to turn it around, that the inevitable game over screen can't be far off. And yet, if you're anything like me, you stick with it till the bitter end. Because sometimes, oh so sometimes, the impossible happens. You turn it around, you stumble across an already landed large alien craft that you don't have to risk entering air combat with. You send the troops in, you accidentally kill 2 aliens with one go, even though that wasn't the intention at all. The aliens get into a bit of a panic themselves, and they manage to recreate the classic UFO technique by shooting one of their own troops in the back of the head. The comedy of errors you're used to contending with reverses, the scales tilt ever so slightly in your favour, and if you're paying enough attention and being careful enough, you actually can bring it back from the brink. You probably won't mind, but sometimes you can. If I've done it, anyone can. And one thing all of this struggle teaches you, something a lot of games would never acknowledge, is that running away is a viable option. It's not what the heroes do, but it is what the survivors, the winners, do. As long as you survive, you can win. As long as your troops are still there, they're not dying, they're getting that little bit better. You've got a sliver of a possible dream of a hope. I think that's what UFO really boils down to, what it always comes back to. It's the progress you enjoy. You start out hopeless, scratching through any way you can, losing 50, 60, 90% of your squad in a mission, and the rest end up in sickbay for a month recuperating from their wounds. But sticking it out past those early days leads somewhere. It's not just about you getting better at the game, or learning how to scam it, as I may well have done. You get the armour so troops can take more shots before dying, at least in theory. You get lasers, then plasma weapons, so you can actually deal damage to some of the hulking gits obsessed with this invasion thing. Later on, you end up with better attack and transport craft, so a very large UFO doesn't immediately mean a destroyed interceptor and a base under attack. Instead, it means you can put up a fight in the skies, and those extraterrestrial vehicles stop being able to run away so quickly. There's even psychic powers, which allow you to learn about your opponents, hammer their morale, and brilliantly take direct control of them. Seeing as you spend half your missions against sectoids and ethereals fighting off their psychic advances, that last element is a perfect exercise in player empowerment. Just for those taking notes. It's just such a steady, perfect progress while always maintaining an ever-increasing threat. You start out hopeless, you end the game on the front foot. Power armor, heavy plasma weapons, hover tanks, the firestorm taking your squad of grizzled combat veterans to the alien home base on their home planet. It flips, the momentum shifts as you play, as long as you play well, and that feeling, that reward is so well earned. It's something special. Admittedly, Chrysalids are, were, and always will be bastards of the highest order. These chitinous swine are capable of turning even your most heavily armoured, strongest troops into zombies with a single swipe. Oh, also the zombies, when killed, turned into more Chrysalids. Yeah, imagine the first time you encounter those in a game that's already stupidly difficult when you thought maybe you were just about getting a handle on things. Yeah. My personal journey through UFO has taken in every version of it available over the years, and in classic Bransfield fashion, I did it in a weirdly ass-backward way. The original version is for the PC, and so naturally that's the best one. I didn't play that until about 2004 or so, specifically around the time I got a new PC to play Half-Life 2 on. No, I started out playing this particular game on the PlayStation with all its terrible controls and incredibly slow-moving action. It was the classic childhood tale, entering a swap shop in Rotherham with whatever it was I wanted to get rid of in my hand, being told I could have whatever from a certain section for a nominal fee, seeing this cover and being completely unable to resist. I took my new game home, popped it in the PlayStation and, well, I'm pretty sure everybody died in my squad. I don't remember much because UFO took a fair amount of time to sink its claws in deep. I do keep thinking I wouldn't have bothered at all with UFO had I come to it a bit later when I wasn't so desperate for any game to play, when I had less free time and instead did things like hang out with friends when I did have free time. It's not a game that's friendly to newcomers, or veterans, but that's beside the point. I digress. Fact is, I did give it the time it needed, and before long I was hopelessly obsessed. My natural need to have all the things came into play with my second purchase of the game, picking it up for the Amiga 1200, which ended up proving itself to be a bit of an odd mix of a decent impression of the PC version while also being a chugging, struggling port. It was demonstrably worse than the PlayStation version, and I didn't actually give it a huge amount of time before, well, my brother sold the Amiga so he could have some money to go on holiday with. That's why I stopped playing it. True story. I only got back to it the other year on reacquiring an Amiga. Anyway, having one Amiga version wrenched from my grasp led me directly to another one. I was convinced the Amiga 500 version of UFO could definitely hold a candle to the A1200 one, which is about the same as thinking a Game Boy game could be technically on a par with a Switch game. I have no reason why I thought this, but I wasn't actually entirely wrong. Right now you'll think I've gone peculiar, I'm sure, but while it looked just 2 steps removed from a Spectrum game, the A500 version actually had better music than the A1200 and CD32 versions. I don't know why. I mean, I want to talk about it running smoothly too, but I have no idea if that's because of my super accelerated Amiga I had playing this or not. But there's plenty there in the A500 version that wasn't in the 1200 one at all. Music, art screens, it even tells you the progress of alien turns, something which isn't in any other version at all, and seems like a thing that, well, really should be in there. Eventually, when I did arrive at the PC version, my world was finally complete. The music might not ever have been as good as that on the PlayStation, but the game itself was pure UFO, running at a good pace, controlling better than the other versions, at least once you learn what all the obscure tabs at the bottom of the screen mean, and generally being a game I ended up losing way too many hours to. You know what? Ignore that. I enjoyed those hours, so they couldn't be wasted. Val Kilmer coined that phrase, I think. The game's aged, obviously, and I wouldn't expect a lot of younger viewers to see the appeal here. I don't blame you, it's clunky and confusing and really bloody annoying even when you do know what's going on. You've got troops who won't walk places they can walk, just because the AI is confused about, a brick or something. You've got the message saying there's no line of sight to blast an alien scumbag, even though there's clearly line of sight. Movement is awkward, let's go with. It's just very 90s. Plus, frankly, it's been bettered. The 2012 rebirth of XCOM was superb, and its sequel, to me, is a better game than this one I love so very much. It was quite clearly made by people who get what UFO is about and updated the core concept with slavish care and attention paid to the source material, while also making it something you don't have to have a degree in icon understanding to play. But that's not really the point being made here, is it? Because UFO Enemy Unknown, XCOM UFO Defense, XCOM Unknown Invaders, XCOM Enemy Unknown in Europe on the PlayStation, whatever you want to call it, the end result is the same. This game is magnificent, and I am far too gone now to ever stop loving it. I appreciate you letting me indulge myself with this one. 25 years is a long time for anything, especially for playing a game that hasn't changed at all over those years. But I'm not sad about that fact, I'm happy about it. And now I'm going to settle my base, build my extensions, buy some stun rods and proximity grenades, sack my rubbish troops and hire replacements until I get a solid initial squad to throw straight into the meat grinder. The way it should be. The way it's always been. The way it always will be.